Among marble walls and inherited silences, a woman who always had everything discovers the emptiness of a life without choice. Accustomed to being served, she never imagined that true awakening would come from someone who serves, a man with a mysterious past and simple gestures. Their encounter is not born from luxury, but from humanity. What begins as curiosity transforms into something that challenges conventions, revealing that love sometimes appears where least expected, and changes everything. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. Aileen Crawford always believed that love was not for people like her, raised among marble columns and windows that never opened. Born with a silver spoon in her mouth, she carried the weight of an empire built by generations of men who never asked what she wanted to be. The Crawford surname meant power, and power meant solitude. At 32, Aileen was a woman of contrasts. She possessed the natural elegance of someone who grew up surrounded by works of art, but her green eyes revealed an unrest that no fortune could soothe. Her delicate face, framed by red hair that fell in soft waves, hid a woman who, despite being admired, was rarely understood. The mansion where she lived was a monument to opulence: Italian marble, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture. But to Aileen it was just a gilded cage, where each room held memories of a lonely childhood. Her father, obsessed with business, was rarely present. Her mother, busy with charity work that seemed more like social obligations than acts of kindness. "Miss Crawford, your new driver has arrived," announced Martha, the housekeeper who had known her since she was little. "I'll be right down," she replied, closing the book she had been pretending to read for over an hour. Aileen never gave much importance to the team that worked for her. People came and went from her life like extras in a movie where she was the involuntary protagonist. But something changed when her eyes met Gary Stone's for the first time. Tall, with broad shoulders and impeccable posture, Gary was about 35 years old. His brown hair, cut with military precision, matched his eyes of the same colour, deep and cautious. He wore a well-tailored dark suit, his hands clasped behind his back as he waited. "Gary Stone, miss. At your service." He introduced himself with a deep and controlled voice. There was something about him that set him apart from the other employees. A silent dignity, a reserve that didn't seem like submission but choice. His eyes never crossed the boundary of professionalism, fixing on a point just above her shoulder. "Welcome, Mr. Stone," Aileen said, extending her hand in an automatic gesture. He hesitated for an almost imperceptible moment before accepting it. The touch was brief, but enough for her to notice calluses on the tips of his fingers. Hands that knew hard work, not just luxury car steering wheels. In the early weeks, Aileen constantly tested him. She changed schedules, asked personal questions, observed his reactions. Gary responded only as necessary, always maintaining a neutral expression that she began to call, in her thoughts, a stone mask. "Don't you ever smile, Mr. Stone?" she asked one afternoon as he drove her back after a tedious meeting. Through the rearview mirror, his eyes met hers for a brief moment. "I smile when there's a reason, miss. And working for me isn't reason enough?" she teased, with a touch of irony. "The work requires seriousness, Miss Crawford." She laughed, leaning back on the leather seat. "You really are a man of stone, Mr. Stone." That afternoon marked the beginning of a curiosity Aileen couldn't explain. The more Gary closed himself off, the more she wanted to discover what was behind that impenetrable facade. It was a game, she thought. A challenge. Months passed, and what started as teasing gradually transformed into something different. The silences between them, once uncomfortable, became familiar. Aileen began to notice details that would have previously gone unnoticed. How Gary opened the door for elderly people who crossed his path. How he spoke respectfully to the household staff, regardless of their positions. On an afternoon of heavy rain, Aileen saw him stop the car and offer an umbrella to a woman waiting at the bus stop with a baby in her arms. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a humane one. But for someone who grew up in a world where every action had a calculated purpose, that seemed extraordinary. "Why did you do that?" she asked when he returned, partially wet. Gary looked at her confused. "Do what, miss?" "Give your umbrella to that woman." He shrugged, a rare gesture that betrayed his always formal demeanour. "She needed it more than I did." Just like that. At that moment, something changed inside Aileen. She began to see him not just as the driver, but as a man whose nobility didn't come from titles or fortunes. As the days went by, Aileen found herself inventing errands just to spend more time with Gary. She noticed herself talking more, revealing thoughts she had never shared with anyone. He listened, responded with few words, but there was a silent understanding growing between them. One night, after a charity dinner that left her exhausted from fake smiles, Aileen asked Gary to drive aimlessly, just to escape for a few hours. "Anywhere specific, miss?" he asked, opening the car door. "Anywhere where I'm not Aileen Crawford." He took her to the top of a hill on the outskirts of the city. From there, they could see the lights shining like fallen stars on the earth. The sky was clear, the full moon hung above them. "How did you discover this place?" she asked, getting out of the car to take in the view. "I come here when I need to think," he replied, maintaining a respectful distance. "I thought you might appreciate it." It was the first time he revealed something personal, something that wasn't in the resume or in the calculated responses he usually gave. Aileen felt a strange emotion, as if she had received a rare gift. "It's perfect, thank you." They stood in silence, side by side, watching the city. Aileen felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't just the place, she realized. It was the company. It was that night that she admitted to herself what she had been trying to deny. She was falling in love. The idea frightened her. Love was not in the plans, especially not with someone who worked for her. It was inappropriate, complicated, full of obstacles that her pragmatic mind couldn't ignore. But the heart has its own laws. In the following days, Aileen noticed subtle changes in Gary's behaviour. He seemed more relaxed in her presence, less rigid. Sometimes she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Small gestures, a book she had casually mentioned appearing on her desk, her favourite coffee always ready on cold mornings. Then, she noticed something strange. Every night around 9, Gary had an unusual urgency to leave, bordering on desperation. He never mentioned where he was going, never offered explanations. He simply disappeared until the next morning. Curiosity gave way to insecurity. In her mind, images formed of Gary with another woman, living a completely separate life from the one he shared with her. The idea consumed her. On a rainy Thursday after he left at his usual time, Aileen made an impulsive decision. She grabbed the keys to her own car, one she rarely drove, and followed him. She kept a safe distance to avoid being noticed, her heart pounding in her chest. Gary drove for about 20 minutes until he reached a modest neighbourhood. The houses were small, some in need of a fresh coat of paint, but there was a sense of community that was missing in the luxury condominiums Aileen frequented. He parked in front of a brick house, grabbed a bag from the back seat, and stepped out into the rain. Aileen stopped further ahead, observing through the fogged-up glass. She saw when the door opened and 2 children, a boy of about 10 and a slightly younger girl, ran to greet him. Their faces lit up upon seeing him, and Gary crouched down to embrace them, laughing in a way that Aileen had never witnessed. Something broke inside her. Children. Gary had children, a whole family hidden from her. The tears came without warning, blurring her vision even more. She felt foolish, naive. How could she have imagined that a man like him would be alone? How could she have nurtured romantic fantasies that had no place in reality? She started the car with trembling hands and drove off, aimlessly wandering for hours. When she finally returned home, she felt exhausted, as if she had aged years in a single night. The following morning she avoided Gary. She asked Martha to inform him that she would be using a different car, that she had personal appointments. She spent the day locked in her office trying to work, but her mind kept drifting back to the images of the previous night. On the third day, she could no longer postpone the confrontation. She called him to the office, determined to put an end to this situation before it became even more painful. Gary entered with his usual demeanour, but there was a shadow of worry in his eyes. "Did you want to see me?" Aileen took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "Do you have children, Mr. Stone? What are their names?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. She saw the surprise in his eyes, followed by something close to resignation. "Lily and Owen," he replied simply. "Your children?" she insisted, her voice betraying her emotion. "No, miss." Aileen stood up, unable to remain seated. "Don't lie to me. I saw them. I followed you." For the first time since she had met him, she saw Gary's mask completely fall. His shoulders lowered slightly, and he ran a hand over his face in a weary gesture. "They are not my children by blood, Miss Crawford, but I take care of them as if they were." He walked to the window, looking beyond the mansion's immaculate garden. When he spoke again, his voice had a different quality, more personal, less rehearsed. "Lily and Owen are the children of my neighbours. The parents, well, they have problems with alcohol. The children are often left alone, sometimes without food. I have found Owen sleeping on the sidewalk because he was afraid to go into the house." Aileen felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. It wasn't jealousy she should feel, she realised. It was shame. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Gary looked her directly in the eyes for the first time. "It's not something you mention among professional tasks, miss, and frankly, I never thought you would be interested." The words hit her like a slap. It was true. The Aileen from a few months ago wouldn't have cared. She would have classified it as a distant social problem, something to be solved with an anonymous donation to some organisation. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, her voice softer. "Almost 2 years, since I moved there." He hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I grew up in similar circumstances. I know what it's like." In that moment, Aileen saw Gary completely. Not the driver, not the stone-faced man, but someone who, despite his own limitations, reached out to those in need. She felt small before him, despite all her fortune. "What do you want for them?" she asked after a long silence. The question seemed to surprise him. "I want them to have a chance. Education, safety, a normal childhood." He paused. "I've been saving to gain legal custody someday, but it's complicated. A single driver isn't exactly what social services consider ideal." Aileen felt something awaken inside her, a determination she had never experienced before. "I can help," she said simply. "I don't need charity, Miss Crawford." "It's not charity, Gary." It was the first time she called him by his first name. "It's justice." In the following days, Aileen contacted the best lawyers specialising in family law. She began a discreet process to investigate the children's situation. What she discovered horrified her. Severe neglect, unsanitary conditions, hospital records for malnutrition. Gary, initially reluctant, eventually accepted her help when he realised that she was genuinely committed to the well-being of Lily and Owen. The process was long and exhausting. There were hearings, psychological evaluations, supervised visits. Aileen was involved in everything, not as a distant sponsor, but as someone personally invested. She met the children. Lily, with her dreamy eyes and talent for drawing. Owen, quiet but observant, with an intelligence that the regular educational system couldn't adequately nurture. 6 months later, Gary received temporary custody. Aileen was by his side in court when the decision was announced. She saw tears in his eyes, the man of stone finally revealing his humanity completely. "Thank you," he said, when they were alone at the courthouse exit. Aileen smiled, feeling a happiness that no material acquisition had ever provided her. "Don't thank me yet. We have a lot of work ahead." And indeed, they did. Discreetly, Aileen began to ensure that the children had everything they needed: a quality education, suitable clothing, and medical care. She renovated the small house where they lived, always taking care not to make Gary feel diminished. Over time, the relationship between them transformed. They were no longer employer and employee, but partners in a common mission. The barriers fell, one by one. Gary began to smile more and talk about his dreams and concerns. Aileen, in turn, revealed vulnerabilities she had never shown to anyone. A year after that rainy night that changed everything, Aileen made another decision that surprised everyone. She announced that she would sell part of her shares in the family business to create a foundation focused on children in vulnerable situations. The first project would be precisely at the school Lily and Owen attended, expanding the library, the science lab, and providing scholarships. When she told Gary about her plans, he looked at her with concern. "You don't need to change your life because of us." Aileen gently touched his face. "I am not changing for you. I am changing for myself. For the first time, I feel like I am doing something that matters." The love between them flourished naturally, as the inevitable result of a journey travelled together. There were no grand declarations, just the mutual acknowledgement that they were where they were meant to be. On the 3rd anniversary of the foundation, they celebrated with a small event at the house they now shared, more modest than the mansion, but infinitely more welcoming. Later, when everyone had left, Aileen and Gary sat on the porch, watching the stars. "Did you ever imagine we would be here?" she asked, leaning on his shoulder. Gary smiled, that smile now frequent on his face. "I never believed in fairy tales." "And now?" "Now I know that some miracles happen slowly, day by day." Aileen thought about the night she had followed him, the heartbreak she had felt seeing him with the children. How could she have known that this pain would be the beginning of her true happiness? "Do you know what I have learned over these years?" she said, intertwining her fingers with his. "That true wealth is not what is accumulated, but what is shared." Gary kissed her forehead gently. "And that some people come into our lives not to serve us, but to teach us how to love." The words hung in the night air as true as the stars above them. The stone man and the lonely heiress had found in each other not just love, but the purpose that both had secretly been seeking. And on that quiet night, under the same sky that had witnessed the beginning of their journey, they knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.